Da, 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 da. Movement! So, in the last video, we added Clink, our player, and if I double click on him, it'll zoom in so you can see him a bit better. We added a rigid body and turned the gravity scale to 0, and we also added a box collider to him as well. And I said that the rigid body needed to be attached, otherwise we couldn't get him to move using code, and that's what this video is all about. Now, a couple of things you might have noticed are a little bit different. I changed the green color because the background was terrible. So my ground, I just changed the color there. I used the eyedropper on something actually. And I've also brought in this kind of top-down view of the chicken. The second half of this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how to make a character move as if you were looking directly down bird's eye view of it. But first and foremost, I want to get my Clink to move around, and that's what the goal is at this stage. Now, one thing I'll say, I've got all these things kind of expanded over on the right-hand side. I kind of like to keep things tidy. So like the rigid body, I know I'm not going to do anything more with this. So I'm just going to press the arrow there. The box collider at this stage, I'm not going to be doing anything more with, so I'm going to make that go. And in fact, even the sprite render, I don't think I need to mess around with that. So I can just see everything on screen. Now, what I am going to do is add a script to our Clink, our player, so we can get it to move around. Now, you could potentially just right-click here in the assets and go up to create and click on, I think script is here somewhere. There we are, C sharp script, give it a name. But I actually like to kind of add the script to what I'm planning to use it for, because eventually I'd have to drag across the script onto Clink anyway. So I'm going to add a component. I'm going to type in player movement, because that's going to be the name of my script. And you can see it says new script there. So if I just press enter, confirm that's what it's going to be, enter again, and you'll notice that the script appears here. And if I click on the script, that's what it looks like. Now, within Unity, you can't actually do any editing of the script. But if I just kind of press play at this stage, then it will try to run this. And there's actually nothing which is happening apart from like the setup of the script. So what I need to do is double click on the script. Visual Studio will open up and the script will appear on screen like so. There it is. Now, I have zoomed in to 150%. It will normally start off default as 100%, but in terms of showing you on screen what's going on, I'm going to use 150%. And if you want other people to help you out with doing what you're doing on screen, it's easier for them to read if it's bigger, if they're looking over your shoulder trying to look at it. Now, like I said, the script at this point doesn't actually do anything, but what we are going to do is just take out the bits we don't need at this stage anyway. These bits are comments, so I'm going to get rid of those. I'm actually going to leave the space there as Liz, and I'm going to get rid of that bit as well. Now, the bit at the top, Unity Engine and the other bits and pieces, that's the libraries we're going to be using within Unity to be able to get the code to work. So you will have to, at some point in these videos, add more to what's on the list here in order for things to work, but I'll explain that more when we get to it. Now, script to make a move. I've actually got the code already set up here. Now, normally I would just copy and paste all of this and chuck it in. You guys will have to type it in yourselves. You might be thinking, well, that's not fair. But the truth is, by typing this stuff out, you actually get kind of experience of what can go wrong and what doesn't work properly, especially if you're using lowercase letters where they should be uppercase and vice versa, brackets and so on, making sure they're in the right places. So you will experience a lot by and getting better at the coding by typing it up yourself. That's the excuse I'm going to give anyway. But what I'm going to do first of all is just copy the variables across. And you'll see that this is exactly the same. So it's got the player movement to start the update as we have here, but we're just basically filling in the gaps. So those guys are going to go there. And like I said, these are the variables. So we're going to have a variable for speed. So basically to dictate how quick Clink our player is going to be moving around the screen. This is we reference to the rigid body I was saying that had to be on Clink. If it didn't have rigid body attached to it, as we did in the first video, then this code wouldn't work. And these are basically floats or numbers to indicate moving X, moving Y. So moving left and right, moving up and down. Now, when the code starts or when the game starts, whatever's in this bracket here, the void start, this will run straight away. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to recognize the item which we've got the code connected to, which is Clink, has a rigid body. Okay, so that's important. That needs to go in there. And this update bit, basically every time we do something on our keyboard, press left, right, up, down, WASD, space, click, whatever it might be, this is what the code which gets called. So it's waiting for something for a user input of some sort. And I'm just going to grab these three lines, copy them across, and paste them into there. And this is basically saying that the speed at which we move from left to right is kind of dictated here. Speed at which we move up and down gets dictated here. And basically that says the rigid body, we're going to make sure that that is what these kind of variables get added to. Now, at this point, you can see that it's not saved, and these blocks indicate on the left-hand side that it's not saved either. But if I press Control S, the star disappears, these go green, and if I come back to Unity, it will kind of load in. Now, if I had done something wrong in my code, down in the bottom left right hand corner, there will be like red right in saying what script there is an error on, what line of the code is an error on, and try to give us an idea of what doesn't look right. So if that happens, it's not a biggie. You just read what it says there, and then come back onto code to see potentially what's wrong. Now, you'll notice that I didn't have any red there, so basically this is ready to go at this stage. And all down on the right-hand side there, look, is the code which we've just saved. So if I go back on Clink, you'll see that I've got the player movement actually. This is the script we added onto it. You can get to that script by either double-clicking it down to your asset or just double-clicking on the grey. But the one thing you'll notice is our speed is currently 0, so we're not going to move if we actually start playing the game. So let's set it to 10, and let's press play. And what should happen is now, then when I press left, I move left. When I press right, I move right, up, down, A, W, S, and D. Now, if you're looking at that thinking that is moving far too quick for my liking, while we're in play mode, we can kind of like mess around with the speed. So say, for example, I wanted to go a lot quicker. I typed in 20. Now, I don't actually need to press play again and for that to load. You can actually see what it looks like as it's moving 20. Now, you can see there's a big, massive issue in the fact that I go off the screen, but that's something which we're going to cover in a future video. But actually, in fact, I want it to be maybe about 8, the speed. I don't know why I keep right-clicking on it. Jesus, right. So if I press 8 and I press that, that's better. That's the speed I want it to go. Issue is though, now I'm in play mode. Now when I press play, it actually goes back to what it was originally. So when you're actually in play mode, you get a chance to experiment with it, but you just got to remember that you'll have to come and change it back to what you're kind of happy with at that stage. Now, one of the issues with that was as I was moving left, I was still facing right, if that makes sense. So next bit of code is just going to be a bit where it actually gets it to flip around to face the direction in which we are moving. So everything there is exactly the same. You've already typed that out, hopefully, at this stage, but we're just going to add in these lines here to make our character flip. So if I copy that, and where are we going? I'm back on here, actually, aren't I? I don't know where it's going in. My brain went elsewhere. And I'm just going to put this underneath that in the update area again. Going to press save. I'm going to come back across here. Hopefully there's no error messages. Normally when it gets to hold on, that's a good sign. And when I press play this time, and I know something's not going to work because our scale at this point is 0.71, whatever that number is there. And in fact, I'm just going to copy that for the time being. You'll see why in a moment. Now, as soon as I start moving, I go back to my original size. Now it flips, brilliant. It turns left when we're moving left, and the same for A and S and D and all that type of stuff. But we've gone back to the scale of 1 and 1 and 1. So on our codes, I just need to change these numbers to that number I just copied. And this only applies to you if you have scaled your character up or down, as discussed in the first video. And with these, I have to put the F in as well to make sure that they are the right size. So like I said, if your character, you haven't scaled it at all, you won't have to worry about any of this stuff. But this is just to show you how to fix it so it stays the right size. Yeah, and I should be explaining this really. But you can see what I'm doing. I'm copying this up here, up into that bit, and I'm removing the minus sign. Otherwise, it kind of wouldn't work properly. So that's the number of the scale of what I put my Clink character down to because I reduced the size because it looked too big on screen. Now this time, when I move in, I will stay that size. So the scale will stay the size I just put into the code. Hi, Future Rob here. Just to add to something past Rob has done, ignore all the extra bits and pieces on here and the extra scripts and all the stuff down on the hierarchy. Because I'm future Rob, I've gone on to do other things. But in terms of movement, one of the things is with our Clink character, he can move around, but you might want to have your character so it can't move in a diagonal direction. So that's me holding down W and D to go top left, WA to go top right, sorry, top left, and in that kind of way. So to fix that, if you want to fix it, that is, if we come back onto our script, so this is our player movement script as it currently stands, and we're just going to be adding something into this space here. So all you'll need to do is, I'm going to copy and paste it, but you'll need to type this out yourselves. If I paste that into that space there and get rid of any extra spaces, and I save that, now when I go back onto Unity and I play my game, I should still be able to move, but I won't be able to move in a diagonal direction. So let's try that straight away. So I can move left, right, up, down. Now the speed obviously is a little bit changed now, so I'm going to knock that down to 2, so it's not so crazy. But now if I try to do top right and top left, I can't actually do it. So that's just showing you how to do that if you want to do it. Now there is one other thing. You might want to kind of do like a grid-based movement system. So when you press right, you only move to a certain amount of pixels to right. And again, when you press it again, like on chess then, when you actually can move from one square to the next to kind of indicate how many movements, how many moves you're doing. So to do that, there is a load of extra code we need to add. You guys will have to obviously need to type it in yourselves, but I'm just kind of paste it in the places it needs to go. The first load of stuff is the variables at the top there, and the next bit there will be an if statement which goes in front of our movement part on the update. So that's this part here. So I'm just going to paste that in. So things are going to get a little bit messy on there at the moment. I have got to add in a couple more lines there, I did notice. So I've got to copy that one in. And that's going to go at the end of this one here. There will be, I keep clicking on the wrong things tonight, right? There will be that one as well, which needs to come in. And that's going to go there. And I know there will be one which goes at the end of this one as well. Please be patient with me. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can. There's that one. I think it's because I know I'm filming and you're kind of watching. I'm taking a long time to do this. I've also got to put this line in after, I believe it's that part there. Yeah, so that goes into there. And I do need to remove this line now, this body dot velocity bit. So let's get rid of that. And I think then I've just got to add in this extra procedure at the end. So this is something called an IE enumerator procedure, which is basically something which is time-based. And this will go separate at that point there. So what I mean by separate is the void update part starts there at the top of the screen, look, and it finishes with a bracket is there, and this is the thing I've just pasted in. So let's save that. Let's go back onto Unity. Let's see what that does for us. So my speed is set to 5, my grid size is set to 0.1. So let's just press play and see what happens. So we know we can't move that now. But this time if I press right, it moves a certain amount. So I've actually let go of D at that point. I'm only just tapping it, and you can see it moves a certain distance at a fixed amount. Now if you want that distance to increase, you can adjust this, or if you want it to decrease, you can lower as well. But just to show you that there are different ways of making things move around. Right, back to past Rob. Now, the next bit of the next video after this really is going to be about how to collect items. We can walk around and collect them. But actually, the next part of this bit is actually to how to look down directly on a character and kind of code that up. Because the idea is at this point, if I was potentially looking straight down on this character, it looks like my Clink is lying on the floor, and the code I just used wouldn't work very well on this one, which I'll explain now. So you can stop this video if you don't want to watch any more of this, if you've got no need for this next bit. But please stick on if you are planning to be putting your character so it is top-down look of it. Okay. So anyway, let's go to main camera to zoom that out. I'm going to bring this guy up onto here. And in fact, I'm going to take all these bits off because he's got like the player movement, rigid body, all that stuff on it. But I'm actually going to take that off. So I need to put on this guy. And let's replace this so he's got a proper name. So you can fast forward through these bits if you need to. But I need to add the rigid body. And I need to expand it out because obviously I minimized it earlier. Set the gravity to 0 as we did before. I also need to add a collider, a box collider, and that's fine there. And in fact, I also need to add that script as well, so player movement. Okay, and I'm going to set the speed to 8 because I want it to move that way. Now, the difference is if I double click on Clink so we can zoom in on them, looking down on them, when I'm turning left, I actually want him to turn so he's facing left, and the same for facing right, and when he's going down. So at the moment, he's facing to go up. So this next bit of code, so if I come back on the player movement, the bit which you were told to bring in for here, this is going to get replaced by these lines of code there. Now, this basically makes sure that if you are pressing left or if you're pressing A, you basically rotate 90 degrees. If you're pressing D or if you're pressing right, you rotate 270 degrees, the face to the left then, if that makes sense. And if I just paste this in, 'cause it's probably best if you actually see it rather than more than anything. Let it come back onto this. I'm hoping we don't have any issues. So, okay, so far. And like I said, we start off facing up. When I press up, I go up. When I press down, I face down. When I press right, I face right. When I press left, and some same for the WASD bits and pieces as well. So if you were going to go for a top-down game, that's how you get the movement to work for that then.